we'll get started with our tax rate hearing.
Good evening. So the presentation this evening is one that is familiar for many who have observed this over the past several years. And I have added in some informational information. That's a great expression, isn't it? Some items that would be informational in nature. So the hearing this evening is provided to allow patrons an opportunity to experience the tax rate hearing with you, and also provide them an opportunity for comment. And important to note that everything that we've done in preparing for this evening's tax rate hearing is in compliance with Missouri Statute 67.110.2 and also Board Policy 3320. In St. Charles County, the tax rate must be set by October 1 each year, and we utilize an interactive process with the State Auditor's Office. Their website provides us forms, and the county provides us with information that we enter into those forms to calculate the levy. This is a reminder slide that we operate under 4 primary funds, and the operating levy may be placed in funds 1, 2, or 4. That's general, teacher, and capital, and the debt service levy is placed in the debt service fund. This is an image of the tax rate hearing notice that was posted throughout the community, and the requirement is that the notice is posted 7 days prior to the actual tax rate hearing. These are the primary factors in calculating tax rates, and for the operating levy and also the debt service levy, it's a calculation of the assessed valuation data, the consumer price index, and also the Hancock Amendment with regard to operating. For debt service, there is no cap on that. It is set at the rate required to meet the principal, interest, and fee obligations. Assessed values are relative to the market value of different types of property, and this slide provides you with those percentages. Residential real estate is 19%, agricultural real estate 12%, commercial 32%, and personal property is 33.33%. And that is according to Missouri statute, and it's applicable statewide. Our assessed valuations by primary category are noted on this slide, and you can see that real estate, the value there has changed by 21.09%, personal property 0.32%, for a total percentage change of 17.43%. Again, this information is provided by St. Charles County, and we utilize that in the tax rate calculation. Important to note that reassessments do occur in odd years. This is a reassessment year for our current fiscal year. New construction is not capped by the Hancock Amendment, and we are allowed to increase revenue based on all of those values. The new construction amount this year is $28 million, and that is an increase of $8.7 million. And the other great thing about that is that it is an indicator of economic development within the community. So we are experiencing an increase in revenue based on that, and the percentage change is 44.67%. The assessed valuation by subcategories is provided for you. You can see that residential encompasses 74% of our overall assessed valuation data. Commercial is 10.26%. Agricultural is typically very small, so it's not unusual in this community that it's 0.14%. Personal property, just over 15%. And then railroad and utility is 0.4%. The grand total is 3.81, 548,160. This shows you the assessed valuation history in our district for the past 15 years, or including this year would be 15. And note that the span of 14 years, from 09 to 23, showed an average increase of 2.22%. The 15-year add of including this tax year increases that to 3.23%. So you note that there are a variety of changes over time. You'll also see a pattern relative to that reassessment odd year versus the non-reassessment even years. The Hancock Amendment, we covered this during the budget presentation, that we do have a limitation. So we are limited on our revenue growth for reassessment values of up to the lowest of the actual assessed growth, which again is 17.43% for this year. The CPI, Consumer Price Index, or this year it's 6.5%, or capped at 5% in total. So that's a Missouri statute, and we are capped at 5% this year. All these numbers are in aggregate, so as we think of the application of that to individual parcels or individual homeowners, that will vary dependent on their own property. This shows you the consumer price index changes over the year. You can see it wasn't that long ago that we were at a 0.7% increase or 0.8% increase. Last year it was 7%, this year it's 6.5%. So no different than other factors within our economy, we are seeing some tremendous swings in this regard. The proposed tax rate for tax year 2023 is a total operating levy of 3.4165 and a debt service levy of 0.6713, which is the same levy that we have had consistently the past few years. We are including a rollback of the debt service levy. The actual state auditor office calculated forms calls for 72.64 cents, and it's being rolled back to 67.13 cents, and that will be sufficient to meet our needs. The information that is presented here shows the percentage change from a year ago to this point in time. Excuse me. The tax levy itself will actually roll back 37.27 cents for this fiscal year. The proposed tax rates, we were required in April to provide an estimate of what our tax levy might be. That is a requirement of the county, and they in advance provide us with data on what the likelihood of the assessed valuation increase would be. You can see we did have a slight adjustment from the 4.0835 that we provided them down to actually up to the 4.0878. This slide shows you the before and after Board of Equalization changes. So each year, patrons have an opportunity to request an evaluation of their tax liability notice. You can see that we had adjustments downward for residential and commercial real estate and an increase in personal property. This slide shows you the St. Charles County school districts and how we compare to them. You can see Francis Howell is there in blue, and in each situation, each district is reducing their levy due to assessed valuation growth experienced. This slide shows you a comparative of all districts in that pool, and this is for total tax rates. You'll note Francis Howell is in the yellow at the bottom and carries the lowest tax rate in the total tax rate space, as well as the operating tax rate. We are the lowest. And the debt service tax rate, we're the lowest by just a few cents in that situation. This is an excerpt from the tax rate hearing notice. We're required to show how much revenue we will increase relative to our reassessment versus the new construction and improvements. And so you can see that total there. This assumes a 100% collection rate for us, and for budgeting purposes, we had originally included a 98% collection rate, and we're making a recommendation based on a reanalysis of historical data to a 99% collection rate. I should also note the State Auditor Office did provide a recalculation. They do that every year relative to changes in railroad and utility and provide those notifications to school districts. So for a future budget amendment, we will be making a recommendation to increase revenue from our original adjustment up by 1.508 million, and then based on changing from a 98 to a 99% collection, we would increase the budget 1.560 million for a total change of 3,068,975. That will come to you within either October or November. This slide shows you the impact to a homeowner, and you can see what we've done is included the tax rate from last year, made an assumption of a market value of $100,000. So again, you take the market value times 19% is the assessed value rate. That provides you $19,000. Divide that by $100, and then multiply it by the tax levy of 4.4605 for last year. For this year, we applied the 21.09% increase, made an assumption that a person's $100,000 home would increase, and then applied the new tax rate to show that the net change for on an annual basis would be $92.99. This slide reminds us that there is an opportunity for people to make claims, certain senior citizens and those with 100% disabilities can make claim for a Missouri tax credit refund. And that link is included in the presentation that is posted publicly. This slide provides information regarding the new Senate Bill 190 and implications for the district. I do have this slide also included within the financial report. I'll go into detail on that during that presentation. That concludes the tax information. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Board, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Ingrid. Before we get started, I'd like to ask everyone that we observe a moment of silence for Eli Turner, also known as Eli Britz, a Howell student and junior Spartan football player who passed away this month. Let's take a moment of silence to honor him. I'd like to open this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda for September 21st, 2023 as presented. Second. Pushkar, Ponder. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed say no.
No, there was something pulled that I wasn't aware of.
Ayes have it. Ms. Jules.
Thank you, President Bertrand. Tonight we are recognizing a young artist whose flag design was selected to fly in front of her school all year long. And here to tell you more about our guest and this fun school tradition is Mr. Kevin Armour at Daniel Boone Elementary.
Thank you very much, Board of Education, Dr. Rumpus, Executive Cabinet, and thank you for this opportunity to recognize one of our outstanding students and artists at Daniel Boone, Ms. Rose Barrett. Along with her and me this evening, we have Mr. Tom Sherman, who's our art teacher, and Kathy Verberkmos, administrative intern. So about 14 years ago, Mr. Sherman started a fun tradition at Daniel Boone where all of our fourth grade students were allowed the opportunity to design a school flag that would fly during their fifth grade year. So Rose's design last year, which was voted on by all of our students and faculty, was selected as the flag that would fly during her fifth grade year. So we started off the year with the big school assembly, and Rose and Mr. Sherman raised her flag to symbolize the start of our school year. And Rose will be given the flag back at the end of her fifth grade year when we select another one. So thank you very much, and we brought Rose's flag to kind of show you here this evening as well, so thank you.
Very cool. That's awesome.
You guys want to come around front? You can get your picture with everyone with the flag.
Thank you.
That's really cool. That is really cool.
I see.
All right, next up is our Student Board Representative. The purpose of the Student Board Rep program is to honor and recognize talented students, elevate student voice, and provide growth opportunities in the areas of public speaking, leadership, and governance. Students are selected for this honor by their principal with input from the student body. They have an opportunity to prepare and deliver a short speech to the board and the public that is focused on their school or the district. And with that, I'll invite Principal Jeff Gruner from Bryan Middle School up to the podium to introduce our rep for this evening.
Good evening, Board and Cabinet. It's my honor to introduce you to this evening's Student Board Representative, Cecilia Culbertson. Cecilia is an 8th grader student at Bryan Middle School. She's a member of Student Council and National Junior Honor Society. She is enrolled in our higher level classes, and science is her favorite subject. Outside of school, Cecilia plays volleyball and basketball. Her favorite book is Animal Farm, and her favorite thing about school is learning new things, especially if it's related to science and math. Her teachers have all described Cecilia as smart, hardworking, helpful, but especially kind. I would like to quote one of her teachers that said, "Cece just oozes confidence, positivity, and kindness. She comes to class every single day with a smile that just lights up a room." Cece is also a natural leader and a role model with her kind and caring demeanor, and I always see her peers drawn to her because of that. I honestly cannot think of anyone better to represent our 4 core ethical values of respect, responsibility, honesty, and kindness. She is a true patriot at heart. Please help me welcome Cecilia Culbertson.
Hello, my name is Cecilia Culbertson, and today I am here representing Bryan Middle School. Thank you all for allowing me this unique experience. Being able to sit in on this board meeting is a privilege and such an honor. I'm extremely grateful for all the teachers and students, especially Mindy Resnick and Carmen Weir, who have supported me these 3 years at Bryan. Being part of such an accepting and diverse school is a rarity not many get to experience. This is a wonderful opportunity that I will never forget. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Board, and for our final recognition this evening, we want to shine a light on an amazing and adventurous educator who recently returned from a research trip to the Arctic. Ms. Rhonda O'Keefe, a geography teacher at Bryan Middle, will be the first in a series of what we're calling spotlights this year. So you'll have a chance to hear directly from her in just a moment, but I'm going to invite Mr. Gruner back to the podium to brag on Ms. O'Keefe just a minute.
Thank you. It's a big night for Bryan Middle School here. I have the honor to introduce to you Rhonda O'Keefe, 6th grade geography teacher at Bryan Middle School. Mrs. O'Keefe embarked on an Arctic adventure this past August for 3 weeks. This professional development opportunity was through the Grosvenor Fellowship in partnership with Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic. This year, the program selected participants from 24 states, 1 U.S. territory, and 5 Canadian provinces. She's here tonight to tell you all about it. I'd like to welcome Rhonda O'Keefe.
He must have snuck a sneak peek at my first few slides. He stole a few of my lines there, Mr. Gruner. Good evening, I'm Rhonda O'Keefe. I'm a 6th grade geography teacher at Bryan Middle School. This is my 29th year in education with 22 years in the Francis Howell School District. My Edge of the Arctic 19-day expedition was made possible, as we said, through a generous and fully funded partnership between Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic. There was no cost to the Francis Howell School District. I met qualifications and applied for the fellowship on my own. I am still processing all of the photos, the interviews, the videos and the learning documentation that I did and working to find ways to incorporate it over the next 2 years into our classroom and through our school and our district. I will share a little bit with you this evening about what is planned. From hundreds of qualified applicants from the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, I was one of 50 educators chosen for this incredible professional development. The expeditions took each of us in pairs to different locations around the globe: Iceland, Greenland, Svalbard, Bali, Antarctica, the Galapagos Islands. And I am very excited to be networking and collaborating with these amazing educators for the next 2 years. What are the chances that there would be 2 National Geographic Lindblad teachers on this expedition with 50 chosen? Katie Lotus teaches locally at St. Joseph Academy. She is currently right now on a ship in Japan doing her expedition, but when she returns, because we live so close to each other, we're going to do a lot of collaboration together for both of our classrooms. My partner for the trip for the Edge of the Arctic was Jill McNabney. She is a high school biology teacher from Michigan. We first met each other in April during a 4-day pre-expedition workshop at National Geographic headquarters in Washington, D.C. This was our home and our classroom for 19 days as we explored Iceland and Greenland in the Arctic. Aboard the ship, we were pleasured to have 14 naturalists with varied degrees and expertise in geology, history, glaciology, marine biology, and botany. Each day presented new adventures that included wet zodiac landings from our ship into communities and into open wilderness areas throughout Greenland and Iceland so that we could discuss and explore the balances between the human world and the natural world. We explored geology, history, ecological habitats and their inhabitants, as well as human culture. To prepare for the expedition, my 6th graders from last year helped me to research my itinerary, and they created challenges for me to complete. I displayed the evidence of the completion of my challenges in the hall just last week. Some of the challenges were to eat traditional foods, find specific landmarks, or to engage in certain activities, even a polar plunge. Geography students used many of the same tools, skills, and vocabulary as Maria, the ship's navigation officer. She provided a lot of advice for students who, within the field of geography, when I sat and was able to interview her. Being able to show my students real-world examples of geographic application is powerful. One of my goals with this expedition was to go beyond just having my students talk and hear about my experience. I want them to experience the role of being an explorer in the Arctic and beyond and develop those curious attitudes on their own as well. I created a Google Earth tour for my students to use next week that will take them along my expedition route with a few photos and brief descriptions along each stop. With this new geospatial technology, students can drag themselves into the map and visit and view the areas firsthand with 360-degree views in each of the locations that I explored so that they can go search and find some of their own explorations. I'm really excited to see what they discover about the Arctic. I was privileged during my time on the ship to hear firsthand from Thora Ornestorter. She is a documentary film producer and former presidential candidate in Iceland, and from Aleka Hammond, the first female prime minister of Greenland. They were invited guest speakers who traveled with us during the 19 days. One particular current event topic in Greenland that we will be debating this year is the Arctic policy. It is currently in the works, and it is working to determine who owns the rights to the North Pole. During my expedition, I also documented grocery store shelves in small communities of Greenland to highlight the issue of food insecurity and the issues of supply and demand. In one grocery store, a head of wilted iceberg lettuce was $8. My students will be examining positive and negative of different approaches to government and to economic trade in many countries around the world this year. The total population of Greenland is about 56,000. In comparison, the population of St. Peter's is about 58,000. Students will be examining the role that geography plays in population density and the culture of its people in a country, as well as examining how to preserve and or adapt one's way of life to the changing world with so many outside influences. Glaciers were a major focus for this expedition, and the reality of climate change was evident. Livelihood in the Arctic is specifically tied to the ice and the waters surrounding the land, and those areas are experiencing significant change. Global issues happening far away can be impacted by and can affect our local area, and students will be examining those cause-effect relationships. Since 2019, I have been an active member in the National Geographic education community. Our district's geography curriculum was last reviewed in 2016, so seeking new and relevant resources is necessary in an ever-evolving and current event content like geography. The explorer's mindset is the foundation of my new learning. It works in partnership with the district curriculum standards while empowering students to take action in their communities based on geographic principles, all while advancing our practices and approaches to help students develop 21st century skills. Students will be examining current event global issues through 7 geographic perspectives. We look for ways to view a global issue within our own local area. There are many possible connections from the focused project based on my expedition, but students will have a voice in what we choose. One possible and potential example is something like this. We would not want to look at solving the problem of fishing gear pollution in Greenland. We can study it, we can look at it, but our goal is not to solve the problem in Greenland. Our goal would be for my students to take that issue that's happening in a global situation and look for local connections in our area. What's happening near our Missouri River? What's happening near our local lakes? What kind of human pollution do we have in our area that we could impact? Because we can't make a difference in Greenland, but we can make a difference here and find the parallels between those two. National Geographic's Geo-Inquiry Model will be used as our guide as the project that the students choose to develop. They will be creating a question together as a class to ask. Collection of the data will not just be from primary print sources. They will be seeking to set up interviews with local experts and community leaders in our area on the topics. During the visualize phase, they will be taking all of the data that they collect and creating their own charts and maps and graphs using geospatial and digital technologies. Geographic education has the power to be more for our students, for our community, and for our world if we let students explore the possibilities beyond our classroom walls. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grosvenor program, the expedition, or the resources that I will be creating and adding to my Google site over the next 2 years, I have brought some stickers. This is for everyone here too. And I feel bad that I'm not facing you well. I'm sorry, that's not my personality. I will sit them on the table over here. Feel free to take them, but it will lead you to photos and videos and resources that I will be continuing to build over the next 2 years. I thank you for your time this evening. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Front and center. Thank you.
I didn't have a question, but I did have a comment. I want to be in that lady's class. I do want to be in her class. That sounds absolutely amazing. And for the record, Cece leaned over and told me she was in her class, and it was just as amazing as I thought it would be. So there you go. Speaking of Cece, welcome, Cece, to our Board of Education meeting. I'm Mrs. Stiglich. On behalf of the school board, we'd like to welcome you to join us tonight. You have the full agenda in front of you. You can do everything but vote. So please make sure if you have any questions, you can ask me personally or ask out loud. We'd love to hear from you. Welcome to our board meeting.
Thank you.
Definitely welcome. As we move forward, we're going to move into patron comments, but before we get to the kind of broad general patron comments, I want to ask anybody who has any commentary on our tax rate hearing, if they would like to come up and speak to that topic specifically. Seeing that nobody, We will move into patron comments. During patron comments, residents of the district and staff members are invited to address the Board of Education on issues related to the school district. Speakers are called forward in the order of sign up, and each speaker has 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please remember that only one speaker is allowed at the podium at a time, and combining time or giving your time to someone else is not permitted. The board appreciates that you have taken the time to come this evening, and we value both your input and perspective. I would like to remind everyone that we expect the speakers will remain civil and respectful with the given remarks. If anyone fails to comply with board policies, regulations, and rules, we reserve the right to cut those 3 minutes short. For your convenience, our 3-minute clock is ready, and we welcome Grant Killian.
All right. Good evening, board, administration, patrons here and at home. Grant Killian, senior class president at Francis Howell North, and I agree. I think that would be a pretty cool class to be in. I mean, that looks neat. Congratulations, Cece. I got to sit there once. It was a great experience. Make sure you make the most of it. So I wanted to share a few comments tonight on the proposed amendment to policy 0380, which is being first read tonight. As class president, as you can probably imagine, I get a lot of requests and ideas from students I represent. While I enjoy hearing every one of them, the fact is that most of them are either unrealistic or are really just a building level concern. However, not too long ago, a student brought a concern to me that seemed to not only be of significance, but of district-wide concern. This student shared that she had been approached individually by a teacher and asked to speak at a board meeting about an extremely controversial subject. She described that this created a situation which was continuously uncomfortable for her, as she did not want to and did not end up speaking at that meeting. I approached Vice President Cook about a policy-based solution to this issue, and I appreciate his working with me on this and helping students on this matter. I want to be clear, even while I have personally not given a public comment until now, besides coming to every board meeting for about 2 years, I welcome every instance in which a student engages the district with any sort of good faith idea. But here's the thing, if a student is asked by a teacher to do some sort of political activity or legislative advocacy, as the amendment reads, it places the student in a really bad position. We are in a time of extreme political tension, even at local school board meetings. I can think of 101 reasons why a student wouldn't want to come speak at a board meeting right now or do any other activity that's concerned in the policy. Especially, even if they agree with the teacher, they might still be uncomfortable putting their views out there. Even more, when it's coming from a teacher, well, every student knows that when a teacher asks you to do something, it's usually not optional. Even if the teacher poses as a suggestion, it could create the appearance to that student that there could be undesired consequences if they don't comply. And let's say they do comply, let's say they do come speak at the meeting, then you, the board, are getting an augmented, artificial view of what's actually important to students because it wasn't on their own initiative. So I hope you take these things into account over the next month as you're looking at the policy in preparation for the second reading. And I didn't plan to speak about this, but there was the directory information that was requested, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to talk about it. What I wonder the most is, I understand wanting to send mailers out. I think that's a totally legitimate purpose. I just don't understand why all the other information was involved. If they just wanted addresses to send mailers to, fair game, but why do you want to know where each student lives? That's what I don't get. Thank you, appreciate it.
Up next, we welcome Stephen Blair.
So hello to all the board members. There is a lot of drama at school boards. I think one of the reasons is because we skip a step whenever it comes to having a conversation. We skip the whole step where you try to define the terms. So when we come together, we say words like racism, but we don't really agree on what racism even means. Words like equity get thrown around, but we don't really understand what equity means, so we just argue about that word too. The truth of it is that the 7 board members here at the district are actually big supporters of equity. The district actually supports equity in a lot of different ways. One of them, there's a special day of school for 6th graders called Transition Day. So they have a unique experience for them because they're a unique population. The district has equity regarding paras. Not every kid gets a para. Same goes for parents as teachers, IEPs, free and reduced lunches, special needs, hearing disabilities, vision impairments. The district has a wonderful Veterans Day celebration last year. It was really great. I hope it happens again this year. But we don't do the same thing for dentists, right? Because veterans have a unique experience, and we want to honor that, and because dentists are mean. They say the words like pressure, and they really mean pain. Let's give each student the education they need, even if it's different than the person right next to them. And if there's any student or group of students who are being blocked from that kind of education, then the reason behind it is because people are playing politics. I believe we have a lot to learn, and that's why curiosity and humility need to be values at the school district from the top down. Leadership creates culture, and we can't learn anything without curiosity and humility. Curiosity can take us to questions like, why are teachers leaving this district? Is it just for financial reasons? What impact, if any, does the recent anti-teacher national talking points and the micromanaging have on them and on our ability to retain and attract other teachers? Or for students, do all students feel supported regardless of their post-high school future? Are any kids' presents or futures being damaged by bullying? Curiosity and humility are good. We expect that from our students. We expect that from our leaders here. Curiosity and humility help us in this meeting, and it can also help us lead a huge district with different experiences. Leadership creates culture. I'm going to sit down and use the rest of my 3 minutes to listen to the other speakers. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Jamie Martin.
In July, many of us were accused of virtue signaling as we stood here pleading with the board not to sunset the resolution against racism and discrimination. But we were dismissed. We were dismissed as folks who couldn't discern between policy and resolve, expression or regulation. And I was reminded that I didn't used to stand in places like this or spend my time in this way, but that was before. Now, most of us have experienced a moment that changed us, that shook our reality so completely that everything that came after looked new and different from before. Maybe you fell in love or became a parent or experienced a tragic loss. My apologies. On my son's 8th birthday, our dear young friend was shot and killed in the light of day in a suburban Austin neighborhood. He was 17, he was Black, and he was unarmed. David was also kind and smart and good, but he was scared. And the officer he was facing was scared. And our David lost his life. When I tell this story, I always say that the officer was good, that he had a good record and a good reputation, and he was even Black. Now, the city fired this officer. They said he hadn't followed a policy, that he should have practiced the letter of the law. But I knew, and his fellow officers knew, that he did what he had been trained to do in countless training exercises and conversations, because policy rarely trumps culture, and policy isn't what holds when fear and pride hang in the balance. Culture, as they say, eats policy for breakfast. Now, Francis Howell has some work to do on culture. We all do. When folks stood here and they told you what the resolution meant to them, they weren't signaling. They were trusting you with their moments. And it isn't too late to earn that trust. You can resolve to make a safer culture where, as our mission says, we empower students for the future. Before the October deadline for the sunset arrives, I urge you to vote to let it stand. Tonight, you have another opportunity to shape culture. Please vote yes to reimburse me for the data I'll use in research and in recommendations for a more equitable Francis Howell. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Grayson Jostas.
Good evening, board. My name is Grayson Justice. My pronouns is he and she, and if you have a problem with that, you can say it to my face. If not, that's your problem. I'm also a alumni of Francis Howell Central, class of 2013. And next month is October, a time where winter gets colder and we switch to our summer and spring clothes to fall and autumn, or autumn. and winter clothes, and decorate your home with fall or Halloween decor. October is also LGBTQIA History Month, where we learn about the men and women who made a difference in America, in American history, from Marsha P. Johnson, Harvey Milk, and many more. It would be great if we learned these amazing people in history classes in Francis Howell. That'd be great, wouldn't it? October is also a very important month because this is what you guys voted for on July's meeting that expire is the resolution of response of racism and discrimination. It's a shame that a board that hasn't come up with a rewrite or a change or change their minds about the resolution. Francis Howell has a bad history with racial harassment before the resolution was introduced back in 2020. Time is running out, board. Either bring this resolution back or rewrite the resolution. And you guys have a choice. You have two roads ahead of you. You can go to the road of basically not doing what you're supposed to do and bring racism and discrimination back to schools and let it go. Or you can go to this road where you can move on and have this resolution back, and racism and discrimination shouldn't be in either school, whether your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, or religion. And this is really important. This is a really important decision for you guys. And if you can't come up with a thing to have this resolution in the schools or in schools, I don't know, it's just, it's totally up to you guys. It's really totally up to you guys. Love is love, and Trump hate Trump's love. I mean, yeah, love Trump's hate. But yeah, thank you.
Up next, we welcome Kelly Bird.
Being a teenager is hard. With the raging hormones, puberty, growth spurts, and constant looking for acceptance, most teenage boys and girls feel like they're at war with themselves and their peers all at the same time. Compile all this with mixed messages, CRT, social justice, social media, news, and peer pressure, it's rough. When indoctrination is being held high in our public education and the influence of sex and gender identity, no, a biological man cannot be a biological woman, and the inverse. It's all about feelings over facts. My son has experienced complete and total disregard for his safety to urinate in a restroom and in the restroom in Francis Howell Central. Why is it that the minority is ruling the majority based on what real law? Quite frankly, I'm just so glad I was raised in the 90s. I'm a single mother of 4 terrific boys in this very district. I have a traumatic past filled with things that would make your head spin. This is why I must point out the dangers of the traumatic impact on the students in English 2 at Francis Howell Central. Did you know trauma can be experienced just by experiencing through the eyes of someone else? Did you also know that 2 English teachers at Francis Howell Central are allowing illicit books filled with domestic violence, profanity, pornography, sex, mental abuse, sexism, heroin use, alcoholism, child abuse, bullying, molestation, incest, kissing, sexual exploitation, pregnancy, pro-choice stances, neglect, rape, abandonment, theft, infidelity and murder, racial profiling, political discrimination, and racist ideologies? Is demoralization of our youth the end game here? What motives does this district have against the nuclear family? Is an unbroken home the norm? Even more alarming is the fact that these books are being perused as Overcoming Obstacles book club. I'm sure the district can choose better books on overcoming obstacles. 4 of the 9 books have been banned across the United States. I am going to hold both this district,
the teachers, the principal, and the librarians responsible. I would like to put you on notice. I will be in contact with the Attorney General. What you are doing is illegal by Section Missouri Standard 573.030. Let me read some of the crap that you're allowing in this district.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, I will be sending you a detail of all the stuff that's going on.
Your time is up.
Up next, we welcome Chris Brooks.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here tonight as a parent deeply committed to the well-being of our children and the sanctity of their educational journey through our public education system. Student privacy is a fundamental right that we as a community need to be actively engaged in safeguarding. Our school district is here to nurture our children's minds and foster their growth in an environment of trust and respect. But recent events have left me deeply troubled in how our district is approaching this vital issue. Over the past week, we saw the revelation of two separate requests for student information, one by a Democrat-led political action committee and the other by the political director of FHEA, the teachers union. While the PAC claimed to only be interested in finding parents for voter registration purposes, FHEA has released a Facebook statement indicating their intent to use this data in the upcoming election for political purposes. Regardless of whether or not this is legal, it is not right or ethical to use student data in this manner. This blatant disregard for student privacy is not only alarming but unacceptable. When we send our children to school, we do so with the expectation that their information will be kept in confidence and used only for educational purposes. So tonight, I call on the St. Charles County Families for Public Schools PAC and FHEA's leadership to do the right thing. Delete any student data you've collected and pledge not to use student data for political purposes. This is not a partisan issue. It's a matter of ethics, responsibility, and whether or not you have genuine concern for our children's future. Let's be clear. If either of these groups uses student data for their political purposes, it will be a reminder to all of us that their interest is only in politics and power, and not the well-being of our students. I also call upon any other political action committees active in this district to repudiate this data collection and commit that they will not use such student data for political gain. However, this issue extends beyond one incident. It speaks to a broader problem concerning the policies related to our student data. Right now, if a parent wants to restrict some of this data from being shared, they have to choose all or nothing. Either allow anyone who asks to have access to it, or you don't get your picture in the yearbook. You can't get your name read in an awards ceremony. You can't get an article about your kids' game-winning tackles. Current opt-out policies are far too binary, forcing parents to choose between bad options. We need a nuanced approach, and it is time to revise these policies. Federal law does not prevent us from doing this. You can develop a better system if you desire to. As parents, we should have the right to choose what data is shared and for what purposes. It shouldn't be all or nothing. We can strike a balance between the necessary data sharing for educational purposes and protecting our children's data from those who would exploit it. Let's work together to create that balance. In conclusion, the protection of our student privacy is not a matter of right or left, but of right and wrong. I implore the political groups to do the honorable thing and delete any student data you've collected. Show that you care more about our children than you care about political power, and let us as a community demand a revision of district data sharing policies. We must be our children's voice. Thank you.
Next, we welcome Chris Hyman.
Long time no see, friends.
Bathrooms, resolutions, sunshine requests, and policy changes. Oh my. My name is Chris Hyman. My oldest graduated from North in 2010, and my youngest is a junior there now. One has multiple graduate degrees, the other has Ivies reaching out, and I attribute that to the foundation they got here at Francis Howell. I pulled my transgender child out of the district between 5th and 6th grade. Who knew 6 years later it would turn out to be one of the safest choices I've made for him? Missouri, 49th in school funding. Missouri, 47th in teacher pay. Missouri is 3rd for the number of books banned in schools. Francis Howell flushed $108,000 of taxpayer money down the toilet on math curriculum our teachers worked hard on because a board member didn't like it. Now, let's talk politics and activism. Something many of you have repeatedly advised you don't engage in, and in fact, use it against us who do. Busy weekend, Mr. Cook and Mr. Bertrand and others attended our education rally Saturday. Activism. I'm aware of who and from which district attended the GOP Freedom Fest Friday night in Defiance this weekend, and I won't even get into flamethrowers now, but that's very political because the sitting senator made it publicly known school board members attended and thanked you for doing so. This man behind me, before me, said let's don't make it political. Now our legislature did win a battle this year against our trans kids by taking away their health care. And Senator Schroer, the same senator touting freedom, flamethrowers, was a big leader in this year's legislation and subsequently wrote a letter to all of the St. Charles County school board members, suggesting policy be made against co-ed, which is the new word for transgender, bathrooms and locker rooms. For the record, transgender bathrooms and locker rooms were legislated in 2016 and overturned in 2017. Mr. Bertrand posted that senator's letter on his official Facebook page. Political. Sunshine requests have been going on for years and are completely legal. If you had waited until Monday to find out what was actually sent, instead of creating chaos and fear, we could focus on the above things that I said. The same people whining about sunshine requests do it all the time. In fact, they did it to 2 of my kids last year. Transparent group space and the walkout led by my student at Francis Howell North after Uvalde. Irony is dead. The resolution, has a group been set up? No. The transparency's
Thank you. Your
killing
time
me.
is up.
Up next, we welcome King Gonzars.
Good evening, Board, and good evening, Superintendent. Over the last several weeks, I attended not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 events where transgender issues were discussed. One of these events had over 1,000 people attending. Patriots voiced their anger, their disgust, their disbelief that biological boys are able to use girls' bathrooms and locker rooms, and that biological girls are able to use boys' bathrooms here in Francis Howell. I had a teacher and mother in the district tell me last week that one of our high school principals, along with her assistant, told her that it was illegal to tell a student which bathroom to use, but that her son was invited to use a gender-neutral bathroom outside of the principal's office. How is it that a very small percentage of students can dictate this? We have a situation in Francis Howell School District where the tail is wagging the dog. Incredibly, in her Senate confirmation hearings, the latest justice nominated to the Supreme Court could not state what a woman is and preferred to call a mother a birthing person. Are we really at a point in this country where science, history, religion, and common sense are being dismissed? We spoke to our state's Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, on how this issue can be addressed. He suggested the following: until transgender issues are fully adjudicated in the courts of law, have your school board members write and enact policies stating bathrooms and locker rooms may only be used by individuals according to the sex that is stated on their birth certificate. That is, biological boys must use boys' bathrooms and locker rooms, and biological girls the same. Transgender individuals are welcome to use designated gender-neutral bathrooms. Such a policy would make accommodations for all. This is exactly the policy that is enacted by the area's YMCA's. Senator Nick Schroer posted on Facebook this past Friday an open letter to the county's Board of Education, superintendents, and to all. It states the undersigned, that is 12 elected officials, including virtually every state senator, every state representative in the St. Charles County, respectfully urge the school districts in our county to take immediate action that these type of facilities will not be forced on students in St. Charles County. I join with our elected officials in calling upon this school board, in cooperation with the superintendent, to enact such a policy immediately. It's a win-win-win situation.
Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Marissa Polson.
Hello, board. I am Marissa Polzine, and lots of our community showed up tonight. Walking in, I knew there was going to be some tension. I'm not a fan of conflict. I'm a good time gal. Like, I just want to have a good time. So I've got some bubble guts. I'm sure I'm going to go off on a tangent like I do, but I've also changed, I've listened to what some people were saying here, and, I feel like there's a lot of things that were brought up tonight that a lot of people in this community could get behind. I personally would love to be able to limit the opt-in, opt-out option. I'm sure we could all sit down and have conversations around that. I think that that's something that this board can do and the community can do together. But I came here because I am frustrated. I'm here to talk about my kids. I came to talk about how my high schooler has 2 classes with no permanent teachers, one being an honors history course. My 4th grader has about 6 to 8 more kids in his classes the past 2 years than my older 2 did when he was in 3rd and 4th grade. To talk about how gifted intervention and SPED programs I've watched over the past 10 years we've been in the district is slowly less and less and less. Those are things I think we could all come together and discuss how we work together to do these things. Those are the issues I want to talk about. Bathrooms, I'll tell you what my kids come home daily complaining about. Vape and weed walls in the bathrooms when they walk in middle and high school. That's what my kids are, and it's upsetting to them. That's the only thing I've heard from my kids and their friends' kids about bathrooms. I would like that to be an issue that would be taken care of if we're going to talk about bathrooms, right? Another reason I'm here tonight is I care about my community. Like, no matter how different we are a community. We live together, we're neighbors. And I want what's best for your kids, I want what's best for my kids, but I want what's best for all kids. And that may be different for each person. And sometimes I hear this whole back to basics thing, and I wonder what basics are we talking about? Like, are we talking about, like, back with my daughter who's dyslexic, they would have put her in SPED classes and not mainstream classes? I mean, she still can't read on reading level, and she's got a 3.98 and was just inducted into the National Junior Honor Society last week. Like, I'm glad things have changed so that we know how to better support all the students, right? So that's what we should all be talking about. I know people are mad about the bus situation. I know that's not your fault, but like, we should be able to come together and have these real conversations about real issues. It's a shame that there's I feel like we're all trying to win. Sometimes there's this win mentality. We're gonna win, but who loses? Our kids in our community. I don't want to fight with people. I don't like it. I don't like walking in here and wanting to vomit. I want to laugh and have a good time and talk about real issues.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Up next, we welcome Alexandra Collins.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Collins. I'm a senior at Francis Howell High School, and I have here a copy of Nick Schroer's open letter to the school boards. I know many transgender students at Howell. I run our Genders and Sexualities Alliance, so I have connections to almost every LGBTQ student at Howell. And I know many of them who identify as male or are biologically female, who you would not ever let in a bathroom with your daughters because they look just as masculine as you do, Mr. Bertrand. Senator Nick Schroer also called us fringe groups, and I disagree with that. I think that the LGBTQ rights movement has been a massive movement since the 1960s, and we deserve our place in meetings such as this, and we deserve not to have to fight to pee. I don't want to sit up here and fight you for my ability to pee. Why I do have a mild question with, why are you so interested in minor genitalia? Because you would have no idea that many of the transgender students that I know are transgender, except that it's marked in the school system. I believe that people should be able to use whatever bathroom that they identify with. However, I understand that there is a safety concern that many people bring up. I believe that's irrelevant because who you're scared of is not transgender women, who you're scared of is not transgender men. You're scared of cisgender men and cisgender women who are going into bathrooms that you do not agree with and assaulting your children. I am not your enemy here. I am just a student. I've been in this district since I was 10. I moved here from Wentzville. My dad still teaches over there, and they are about the same on bathrooms as we are over here, but they also have not rescinded anti-racism policies recently, and they aren't actively banning as many books as we are. I love Francis Howell, I truly do. I'm incredibly involved at my school, and I love the community, I love the people, I love the teachers. But transgender students deserve to feel safe in their schools, even if that means having separate gender-neutral bathrooms, which our schools are not built to accommodate. That's all, thank you.
Up next, we welcome FHEA.
Good evening, everyone. We are pleased to share that we had our first meeting between FHEA executive officers and the district cabinet last week. We appreciate having this time to work together to collaborate on questions and concerns so that we can provide an excellent learning conditions for our students and the best working conditions for our educators. Our MNEA UNISERV Director, Lisa Blaha, is currently providing training to our building representatives to ensure that they can support members with strong communication, collaborative meetings, and building principles and advocacy. We look forward to hearing what progress Director Ponder and the board have made toward answering the concerns of the community regarding the resolution in response to racism and discrimination. FHEA stands ready to help with this important work. Finally, tonight, the board will hear a proposed change in policy that will prohibit staff from sharing information, photos, on any non-district site without prior consent. We'd like to share our concern that some of these changes could have negative impact on celebrations with administrators, coaches, band directors, and club sponsors. They're able to share during district events, as well as impacting educators who want to share snapshots of learning from our classrooms. Has the board considered other unintended consequences? Would these changes impact apps like Remind, Seesaw, Talking Points, and S'mores that staff use to communicate with families? Many parents and patrons enjoy being able to get a first-hand glimpse into the life-changing work that is happening in this district, and we hope the board will consider how far overreaching this policy could be. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome PISPA.
Good evening, President Bertrand, members of the board, Dr. Rumpus, cabinet, and patrons. The first month is down in the books, and what a time to celebrate what we've been doing right. We're a district with some of the best high schools, ranking in the top 10% of Missouri. We celebrated our IT professionals this week, and during the heat wave in August, we celebrated our bus drivers. October 2nd is Custodial Appreciation Day, so show the silent heroes some love. We recently had our 9th annual First Responders Night. We've been showing our appreciation to all the dedicated employees in our district, but also within our communities. We rolled out the One Howell recently. I can't wait for my shirt I ordered. But it's an incredible culture to bring to life. We're hosting our first senior citizen prom September 30th for our community. We have our first citizens in our school's class up and running. We're being transparent. We're doing a lot of great things, and we just wanted to shine a light on that. Go to our Facebook page to just see all that's happening in our district. It's amazing when you're all in this together, united. One Howell. With that being said, we understand our CFO wants time to really get us financially prepared for spring negotiations. We ask that you consider coming back to the table not for wage-related items, but for some items that can really help your support staff get the rest they need this winter break. A lot of departments are still running short-staffed, but doing the absolute best they can for the kids in the district. Just something to consider. Sometimes the small things mean a whole lot. We hope everyone has a great upcoming fall break and of rest and recoup and get ready for the busyness of the winter season. Thank you.
Board, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda for September 21st, 2023 as presented. Krishkar, Ponder, our Vice President Cook. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, I'd like a motion to approve the travel request number 5, ASCD Leadership Summit as presented.
So moved.
Stiglich.
Second.
Harmon. Discussion board?
Appreciate you pulling this one. Similar to other conferences in the past, this one just has some themes that I don't think are the best for our district here, so I'll be voting no on this one.
Other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. We do that by roll call?
Yes. Director Harmon?
No.
Director Pushkar?
No.
President
Aye.
Bertrand? Vice President Cook?
No.
Director Ponder?
Aye.
Director Stiglich?
Aye.
Vote split, the ayes, or the noes have it. Next board, I'd like a motion to approve the September 2023 monthly financial report as presented.
So moved.
Cook.
Second.
Director Ponder. Ms. Embry.
Thank you very much. So I very much appreciate this opportunity to provide you a peek behind the curtain on the work that is taking place as we analyze the performance of the FY23 budget compared to the actual experience. This evening I've included within the presentation a budget calendar, and I'd like to spend some time reviewing that with you, and then share at the end some financial impacts that may be pretty significant for our district. Excuse me. So this represents a tentative budget development calendar, and as you know, we are going through our routine reviewing the budget performance currently, and we expect that to conclude in the coming months. We also, during this period of time, I've indicated to you that we would bring to you any budget amendment recommendations as we know new information. We just had the tax rate hearing and the adoption of the levy that impacts the current year. We will be implementing a new capital planning process in the month of October for development of the 24-25 fiscal year budget. And we will also be developing a process where we're reviewing all current year budgets with our directors, especially beginning with those leaders, and then conducting further those reviews with our principals. But looking at the current year budget, also with a focus on what changes might be needed, whether it be reductions or increases as we work on building the FY25 fiscal year budget. So during this window of time also, collective bargaining begins in the month of January and concludes by May for all of the negotiation process. And then I would also appreciate the opportunity to provide you with a variety of presentations. They would be very brief and just building your context of what the budget is comprised of for the current year and what it might look like as we move forward. Those might begin in the month of February, leading up to the culmination of the budget recommendation. We would anticipate having preliminary information to share with you regarding the needs that have been identified in the district during the month of March. And then mid-May, we know that the legislative session ends, so we have an understanding of primary impacts to public education. We would work with the leadership team in prioritizing the recommendation to you that would be forthcoming in May, and then likely would ask to set a special meeting of some kind for the comprehensive budget recommendation in early June, then seeking your approval at the June 20 meeting. As you know, we need to have our budget approved prior to July 1 of the next fiscal year. This slide just reminds us of our progress and the work that we're conducting. It's similar to what we provided before. After the review of all the FY24 data is concluded, after the 23 data rather, we will provide a multi-year projection that will help us understand the impacts of any decisions you might make moving forward on in multiple years, at least 3 years out. So this analysis I've broken into two pieces. One is affecting mostly general revenue, general operations, and then there are some special revenues that are one-time sources or they're unique in the application of the fund balance that is carried for those. I won't go over each slide. This has been posted for your preview. It's been posted publicly on board docs for anyone to access. I'll pause on just a couple of large items and then continue moving forward if that's okay with you. That'd be fine? Okay. So each of the slides is constructed to either provide you information about that specific revenue or to provide you historical context of the data that we see within the general ledger system. And in each slide, we're indicating what the impact was as we look at the gap from the revised budget of FY23, the year that ended June 30, to how the actual landed and if we received additional funds. We've covered that in the past meeting as well. And so then at the bottom, we are providing you with an FY24. We know that we need to affect our current year budget to adjust it based on what we've learned on this analysis. So in this instance, delinquent tax, we know that following the tax rate hearing, we need to take a look at how do we set our budget in the current year, and I alluded to those impacts in the tax rate hearing presentation. So again, the change and then the forward impact. I'll move forward to a larger one coming up. So each of those are posted. Let me pause on that one if I can figure out how to go backwards. How do I go backwards? Could you back me up, please? Not working for me. I need PD on how to operate this. Go back again, please, and again. So that prior period adjustment. So the very next one, I'll move that forward. So this is unique. We had a prior period adjustment. Normally, we would budget nothing in this code. And so what we need to do throughout the year is monitor that. This evening, the Missouri United School Insurance Council, or MUSIC as we refer to that, is presented for your consideration, and they do go back and do a retrospective review. So it's a consortium. We pay based on all the data that they've accumulated, but then they do basically some, it's not profit sharing because it's a nonprofit, but basically they refund back any overages. So that $322,269 is an anomaly, and that's a specific example. We also had a retirement correction based on some processing, confusion in terms of what qualified and what didn't from an FY22 expenditure, and that revenue was received in FY23. Then moving forward, this is the basic formula slide. We've talked about the financial institutions tax and how we received a significant amount of revenue this past year. We also received a correction that was provided by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that represented the 2 prior years, FY21 and FY22. So again, we see significant fluctuations, sometimes out of our control and out of our awareness, and we always must be agile, and I would say to you, maintain an appropriate fund balance to manage through that. I'll move forward again to another section. So again, this is local to federal to other districts providing. So this is that section, I've referenced it as special purpose, and I'll highlight for you that these first few slides are relative to food service. We had previously, as you are aware, COVID waivers, and so students weren't required to pay, and then we've seen fluctuation in how we are now serving students and new revenue is coming forward. And so you can see that food sales to students, how that line has changed significantly, dropped down to just under 200,000 in FY21, and then FY22 was 0 because of the waivers. We were receiving more federal support during that window of time. Then it spiked back up. When it spiked up in FY23, it rose even higher than our FY19 values. So again, some significant fluctuations. We commit to you to monitor this throughout the year so that we can keep you apprised of any recommended budget changes. An important note at the very bottom of this slide, and it's on each of the next food service slides, food service balances, while they're not contained within that restricted fund balance on the ASBR that causes our fund balance percentage to be generated, they are restricted in use. So any balance that we carry within the food service fund must be allocated for supporting food service expenditures. So very important to note, we align to the food service balance that is maintained with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that is part of our audit process as well. So again, there's school lunch and breakfast that's federally funded. And then these next slides are relative to ESSER, and we all know that those were considered one-time funds, and so we anticipate at the conclusion of this fiscal year, we will no longer receive ESSER revenue. So again, one-time funds that we cannot rely upon for recurring costs. This one is a unique one. It's a grant that we received. We are so proud of and thankful for our employees who had their eye on this opportunity that we might bring in more revenue for Francis Howell School District, and they were able to do that. Our revenue exceeded budget by $1,469,432, and the indicator for us is that it wasn't monitored and a budget amendment was not provided. So again, we will continually monitor any grants coming in and provide you a budget amendment recommendation for both expenditures and revenue as is necessary. So much like the food service balance, student activity balances are the same. Any student activity balance that is maintained within our operating fund balance is exclusive to the use of student activities. So the revenue must be used for the purpose for which it was raised by students or contributed by students. So it's not our money to use. That's maintained in a separate fund. Again, ideally, we would have an offsetting expenditure and revenue budget so that they net to 0 and have no impact on our budget. And what we can see here is that FY23, we did increase again, the revenue budget increased again to $1,945,000. And we've also included for you the expenditure line so that you have context of those changes between the two. You can see that our budget was $1,945,000. Our actual revenue was $2,541,000. Our expenditures that year were $2,399,000. So based on that data, I would recommend that we set our budget at $2.5 million. And actually, this adjustment takes us to a 2.2, but we may take a further look at that and determine the proper place. So this slide provides you our operating cash flow for FY23. And what it represents is the influx of revenue and the outlay of expenditures on a month-to-month basis. It also provides you with a running balance at the close of each month. And so it's slightly colored. You can see that on the line for November 2022, our running balance was just over $6 million. To provide you context on this business that we are running that supports educating students, our payroll runs on an average during that year $16 million per month. So while 6 million seems like a lot of money to end the month with, it's not when you consider the likelihood of bills coming up. So had we not received the December revenue, so if you look in the revenue column, you see 3 cells that are highlighted green, December, January, and February. Those are our highest revenue months, and that means that we had patrons paying their bills in early, because likely they paid them in November for us to receive them in December. The turnaround time lags typically a month. I'm not familiar with the situation here, but we'll learn that. And so those revenues then spiked our running balance up, and we continued to spend that down. You can see in June on the expense line that our greatest month of expenditures is in June, and that's because we do pay those balance of contract checks to our certificated employees. And so that's very typical. This cash flow looks very normal to most other districts. This does tie to the ASBR that has not yet been officially audited, but has been accepted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that shows there that we ended with a fund balance percentage of 27.61%. This shows you a visual, if you are a visual learner, of the lines. So again, this is not a typical in and out process within public education. And again, that line graph would look very similar to other school districts as well. So other financial updates I referenced earlier, Senate Bill 190 and the property tax credits. This information highlights the St. Charles County ordinance that would allow for eligible seniors that are 62 years of age at January 1 of 2024 to apply for this or be considered for this tax credit. And basically what this will do is it will freeze their taxes in tax year 2024. We have not officially worked on calculating what that might look like for us. Early information from staff at the county office indicated that we could potentially experience a $6 million loss of revenue, meaning that their assessment would not grow. So a lot of factors have to come into play, and we can look at historical data to make those assumptions. This next slide is some great news, and that is I prepared for you information previously about the state adequacy target, and that is a primary factor in the state basic formula calculation. And so we do have information about how that will impact us. As a reminder, because of the change in MSIP 6, the districts that are identified as the high-performing districts have changed the calculation. And so basically they look at the total costs to educate a student in those districts, and that's how they determine what that state adequacy amount should be to educate a student. So the updated calculation, this is a slide that was presented to the Missouri State Board of Education on September 12th. And what you can see is that the adequacy target would increase in current year, it's $6,375 per weighted average daily attendee, our kids attending school. It would grow to $6,760 in FY25. The way this must be handled is they roll in a 50% increase over 2 years. And that's why you see then in FY26 it would grow to $7,145 per WADA. If we did simple math and said we had 16,000 WADA in the calculation with the $385 per WADA increase, that would result in approximately $6.16 million for Francis Howell School District. The challenge for us will be, will this be funded? And when I reference that mid-May moment when the legislative session ends, we will likely have an understanding of whether this will be fully funded or whether they will need to prorate that. The other risk that we would have would be that they may fully fund the formula, the state adequacy target, but they may decide to affect a reduction to the transportation formula, which had been in place for many, many years prior to that fully funding situation that occurred a couple of years ago. So more to come on that, but we'll continue to watch it and learn more about that. Do you have any questions or other clarifications I might provide you?
You mentioned the variances with music, and I forget the other one.
The other one was an ESSER. It was a refund that occurred.
Are we able to get any preliminary data if that were to happen again, do you get anything in the interim that tells you this is going up, this is going down?
We don't. I don't anticipate that we would be able to do that. We could look at historical data on what that has meant for the district, but it really is relative for the music insurance relative to utilization and relative to the premiums that districts are assessed.
I had one other question I wasn't real clear about. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
It seemed like there was an overlap of the time when we, I guess, do the negotiations and the time that we have a concrete idea of what we were fully funded for. Am I correct in that?
It's a challenge. And I also often highlight that tonight you set the tax levy.
Yeah.
But we had to set the budget in June.
Yeah.
And this is just the normal rotation of public education and how you approach the work. So it does create challenges. There are many districts that hold on negotiation decisions until closer to seeing that legislative process play out, closer to the end of the session. We can, look at more information that might be available to us, but that's.
I mean, in an unusual year, we've had a couple unusual years here lately. And I'd hate to see us put in a bind with a very low balance at some point in the future.
Sure.
Anyway, just my personal questions. Thank you.
Other questions, board? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, I'd like a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Second. Stiglich, Ponder. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Can we talk about some, can I make a comment real quick?
You make a comment.
I just wanted to talk, I know we got a couple emails, and then going through some of these, first off, I'll say, I think $7,500 is too low for us to worry about personally. I think it should be higher. But there's a couple in here, and I know I talked to Ms. Embry about this earlier today. There's a couple I think that red flags, I guess, that some people in the community might have problems with when you're going for items for approval under the guise of a secure or emergency procedure, when really it's just for the Recplex pool, which you know you're going to do, you know you're going to need next year. And then the next one was junior achievement. It was after the fact. I know Ms. Embry has been talking, and you guys are working on a process to improve that so this doesn't happen again. I just think it would aid to encourage you to keep working on that process so that these sort of items don't come up, and then people in the public start thinking, you guys are just covering yourself. You're spending money, and then you're coming back just to cover yourself. So I would just encourage you following through on that process and getting that in line and working out any inefficiencies.
I happen to agree with Director Harmon, and I think there's other processes that we can work on as well to decrease the workload of the people that do the accounting and do such a great job at it. But at some point, I think we really have to be serious about running this more efficiently. And that's no reflection on anybody sitting here now. I'm just saying we can always do something better. I know Carol and I have talked about some of the requirements and the way things are done, and it just seems like having a business background, there's an easier way, and so I hope in the future we can move towards that.
All right, board. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, like a motion to approve the tax rate as presented.
Second.
Pushkar, Ponder. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, I'd like a motion to grant the reimbursement of fees associated with Jamie Martin's Sunshine Law request as presented.
Second.
Cook. Director Harmon. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, say no. No. Noes have it. Board would like a motion to approve the Teamsters Memorandum of Understanding as presented. Pushkar, Ponder. All those in.
Mr. Bertrand, I just wanted to take a quick second to thank our Teamsters representatives. We had a conflict in something that was proposed to the board, and they were very professional in bringing that to our attention and asked us to work with them. We had some very great conversation, worked very collaboratively together, and we're happy to propose this change to you as something we worked together to do to continue to support our bus drivers and monitors who do this additional work. So just a shout out to all of those on that team who did great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Next up, we'll have our Prop S update. Ms. Embry.
So President Bertrand, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. We're actually going to start tonight. Each month we've been providing a Prop S update, which has generally been focused on the progress of Francis Howell North. Tonight our update will be a bit more comprehensive. We will start with our Director of Facilities, Mr. Salim Stutzer, who's going to share an update on bond program progress throughout the district, which will include the monthly update on Francis Howell North. And then Ms. Embry will come back up to the podium to provide a bond finance update, including where we're at with bond proceeds that have been spent year to date, our current encumbrances, and then the remaining bond funds that we have. And she will conclude that by sharing our initial recommendations for the next bond projects and engage in a discussion with you on next steps for the board.
Thank you, Dr. Rompus. Good evening, board. And we'll work through this fairly quickly, but we're going to highlight really the high-level projects that have been completed throughout the district. There's a few other miscellaneous smaller items that won't be captured within our presentation, but we'll certainly continue to update that as we move along. So we've completed a total of 16 security vestibules. You can see the school sites there. And obviously the board, as a board, you've given us your approval to start working on the remaining 5 here, and those are listed out there as well. So these are elementary sites. We've got a total of 8 that were completed. You can see the slides there. Another set of elementary sites. These are middle schools. And these are 3 high schools. Other improvements across the district, I also want to make sure that I highlight our internal staff. There was a lot of work that took place at Becky David. You can see the scope of work there, and really about 95% of the scope of work here was really driven and managed by our managers along with their support staff in various areas, utilizing third-party vendors to help complete that work. But they did a great job. For those of you that have had the opportunity to walk through Becky David, I don't have context for what it looked like before, but I can tell you I have context for what it looks like now. And the work was outstanding. Again, Becky David on the exterior, obviously we did do some paving work. There was a little bit of milling in certain areas to kind of make sure that we get everything feathered in correctly. So the first picture there is the playground, and then we obviously made paving improvements to the parking lot itself. This is our Central High and Sager campus. Again, a lot of paving work. The entire complex there, from an asphalt standpoint, received new asphalt. And then obviously, with the transition of central office to the 801 building, obviously there was a lot of finish work here, as well as relocating and bringing over Union High School. There's significant work that took place, obviously, on the second level to be able to accommodate instruction for those students. And then down to on the right-hand side there, with the central office moving to 801, we were able to go back and do some renovations and improve the old central office to the new transportation center. And you can see the work that's taken place there. Other improvements over at Hollenbeck, paving work, new track. Again, Francis Howell Middle also received paving on the track as well. Moving into Francis Howell North, a lot of work is taking place there. We had our progress meeting today. We're really trying to beat the weather. We're getting ready to complete site work for the most part. There'll be a few things that obviously once we demo the existing Francis Howell, we'll continue to develop that area. But where we currently sit right now, we're getting ready to lay asphalt on the drive that goes all the way around the building. The home grandstand, they were setting the structural beams on the piers that had already been set, so you'll start seeing that structure get erected here in the next couple of weeks. They will start paving, laying asphalt for the track. Again, these are all weather-driven scopes of work in order to beat the change in weather coming up. The goal is to have all of the exterior site work really completed by mid-November, including turf on the field as well as the track surface being completed as well. Up also on the north end, we did have to relocate the construction trailers. They're kind of on the northwest corner now. That way we can develop that north site. That work is moving along. What we did end up discovering, obviously where the old tennis courts were, there was actually another layer of tennis courts underneath that. So there was asphalt and then post-tension concrete poured on top of that. So that work's a little bit slow as we're having to do basically double the demo. On the interior, majority of the glazing is in, as you can see here. We're working on finishing out the painting of the main gym. Restrooms, got all the resinous floors complete, as well as the wall tile. And the business lab there, flooring, ceiling grids installed. We're still running a little bit of minor mechanical, electrical plumbing above ceiling, but we should be wrapping up with that in the next couple of weeks. General science classroom, we're setting tables, and then we'll have the epoxy resin tops that'll get set here in the next week. And really the same process there in the chemistry labs. We're setting casework and setting the epoxy resin counters. So I'm going to turn this back over to our financial officer, and she'll give an update for her. Thank you.
Okay, so our intention for your receiving this evening is the process for large-scale projects that was covered with you during the March board meeting by Dr. Rompus. And we'll talk about spending requirements and bond funds. The financial update is embedded within this, as well as a conversation about the contingency funds. We do have commitments that aren't yet encumbered, so I'll cover those for you, and arbitrage earnings, which is a unique conversation that districts are having these days, and then followed by the project recommendations. So this slide is familiar to you. It was included in the report that Dr. Rompus gave in March regarding the Proposition S review, and embedded in that then would be, this is our commitment to you that for large-scale projects moving forward, we will stop and explore the new information with the board and seek approval to continue forward with any of those different phases of design. This shows you a bond spending requirements chart, and so as a reminder, the issuance was issued in two phases, September of 2020 and then March of 2022. And the overall primary target is that we spend 85% of the bond proceeds within a 3-year period. There is a 5-year fallback provision, and all of this ultimately is reviewed by bond counsel to ensure that we have maintained an appropriate process for delivering on spending bond funds. The idea behind it is that when you receive bond funds, you don't leave it sitting in the bank and earning interest on it. You go ahead and move forward with your projects. That's usually not a problem in districts. We have lots of needs. This shows you a financial summary of all expenditures that are associated with Proposition S as of August 31. And I've noted for you on the side there each year how much we spent in each fiscal year. There is an encumbrance amount of $45,342,385. I am highlighting for you that some project expenditures have been coded to regular capital, so As the years progressed, some of those were provided to that Fund 4 amount that is part of our regular operating structure. And then also, with regard to security vestibules, there are a number of those that are included within that district-wide total amount. They all got coded to the same thing because they were part of that same project. And when the pay app showed up, they were coded to one accounting code. This shows you a summary of revenues and expenditures with the encumbrances also resulting in the net amount. So revenues include the earnings from investments, over $4.8 million, bond premiums, $34.757 million, and the actual sale of the bonds was $243,915,926 for a total revenue of $283,552,253. You can see the expenditures there where we have bond fees of $1,557,000, bond projects of $151,690,000 to date, and then that total of $153,248. We have encumbered the S.M. Wilson contract at a value still of $45,342,000, and that also then I've noted for you the contingency return of $3.2 million that is anticipated. That adjusts down the total expenditures to $195,390,000. The net then becomes available funds for decision making of $88,161,000. So this slide further defines the contingency. It shows you the original construction contingency of just over $7.3 million. We have construction-related costs and then some other costs that were incurred as some modifications were made when new information was known, adjustments needed to be made, and the culminating remaining construction contingency balance is just over $4.5 million. And the unused contingency distribution will include a split of 70% to the owner or the Francis House School District and 30% to S.M. Wilson. So based on that data, the current estimate is a $3.2 million contingency return. So remember that $88,161,000, that's what is available for making decisions. We also know that we need to provide furniture, fixtures, and equipment for Francis Howell North, and we've estimated that at $3 million. We have the remaining security work. We have updated costs on that, and so that has been adjusted to $938,837. Leaving an unallocated remaining balance of $84,222,000. So with regard to furniture, fixtures, and equipment, you can imagine that's a big lift to make all of that happen and do it in a timely fashion so that we are ready for students when the building opens. An inventory has been conducted. We are recommending that we pursue the interlocal purchasing system, most often referred to as TIPS, and it's an avenue that is available, a cooperative that's for school districts, it's for municipalities, it's for other governmental agencies and state agencies, so that you can rely upon their pricing that they've received based on a vast volume of collective entities. And the moving costs, for your understanding, just to move everything that's currently in the building would be $750,000. The cafeteria tables will be moved. Those have been identified as being in great shape. This would be compliant if we were to use this avenue with a Missouri statute and also board policy regarding bidding requirements. And I want you to know also, I've visited with Mr. Stetzer about this, we would definitely vet pieces of the pricing to ensure that it certainly does align with what we would expect to receive for particular products. What it does is it eliminates the need for additional staff to manage this heavy lift, and they would have just-in-time delivery where they also assemble it for us, so that would be part of the package deal. So we will be bringing forward a recommendation for your consideration during the October board meeting on this. The potential estimated cost is $1.7 million. And to speak with Dr. Wilson, we would likely pursue a similar path relative to technology needs in the building to equip the classrooms. This slide helps provide you some additional information relative to arbitrage. And so this is, again, something that's very unusual. I don't remember in my entire career that I had to deal with arbitrage refunding of interest earnings. So the situation is that if a patron or entity purchases the bonds when the district sells the bonds, and let's say that it's at 2% interest earnings for a specified period of time, then the district receives the money, but then we're able to make more interest. And again, this is about interest earnings values. It's not about comparing interest rate to interest rate. It is a complicated tax analysis, again, that is performed by bond attorneys. We are currently in a situation, we're aware that of our wonderful interest earnings that we receive, we will likely need to refund to the Internal Revenue Service likely 1.1 million at this point in time. We just received a new notification today, but certainly $1 million. And so that money doesn't go back to those entities or individuals who purchased the bonds. It doesn't stay with the district. It goes to the Internal Revenue Service, and that's per IRS Code Section 148. So that inquiring minds want to know about that, right? So that is just for your education on arbitrage earnings. It's so rare that Mr. Myers contacted the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, because my curiosity is, do we commit and spend down all the bond money and then a year later have to pay the bill, or 6 months or whatever point in time? How do we code that? Because we wouldn't code it to bond, because we have to spend all the bond for them to do the calculation, so they know the timing of all those payments. And so they had not considered it. They don't have it in the Missouri Financial Accounting Manual, and they had to check into that, and they told him that it could be coded to Fund 10 or Fund 4, which would be regular capital, just like we would code bond fees. So interesting thing to learn. So this again restates the recommendation for your consideration. So now we're transitioning into the actual projects that we are recommending that get moved forward. So, and I will offer that Dr. Rompus may chime in. I'm providing you with basic information, and then he certainly has institutional knowledge to share as well. So this is about Henderson Elementary, and we're providing you the enrollment projection. We know that that projection has not proved itself to align perfectly, but there is a slide coming up that will show you that it was amazingly close and spot on. So current enrollment in Henderson Elementary is 673 students. The capacity is 683 students. And we do want to offer that these recommendations for these projects are not about capacity in the building. Capacity for regular instruction, those needs are being met. The needs that are presented are above and beyond that, dealing with other ancillary services that need to take place in the building, and the creative ways that those are being addressed currently. So again, that information is per the demographer. The demographic study indicated that 664 would be the high for this fiscal year. So that's slightly off there. That demographic study again was conducted in August of 22 and provided in a report to the Board of Education October 2022. These slides provide you, it's really hard to capture what you really experience when you're there. So I personally walk the journey. We have students who are receiving their lunch in the lunch line, and then they walk approximately 500 feet to the space where they actually sit to eat. And so that's a very unique structure. They're carrying styrofoam and plasticware with them as they go to go enjoy their meal. Those create messes through the hallway. It's just a very different way to address the need. A bigger issue is that we have over 80 PTAC, or package terminal air conditioning units. So if you've ever stayed in a hotel or a motel, you may have experienced that unit in the wall, and that's what is our heating and cooling for our entire building. There are some rooftop units, but mostly this is what is placed in those classrooms. So it's individually managed, individually operated, and no central control of that whatsoever. We imagine it is highly inefficient for a building of this size. And as you know, you've approved multiple emergency repairs to different units, and even the ones that were purchased not that long ago to replace some of these have been failing. This shows you some of the creative instructional spaces. So for small group instruction needs, teachers and the leader in the building, they've set up makeshift walls and different structures to attempt to provide that privacy setting for instruction for students. We also note that there are a number of storage items that are placed in hallways where students and staff are walking every day. Not an ideal situation. They're making the best of it. We know that students are receiving great teaching and they're doing great learning in those spaces in spite of the challenges. So we've, again, summarized for you some of those space limitations within this building, highlighted for you the other challenges, including that HVAC system. So this shows you a draft design, and our architect, Honer, is continuing to work on this. I will tell you that I want to emphasize again, we are committed to bring you that opportunity to receive the information, for you to make decisions and approve the direction that we're headed. These two projects here, they're in a very gray space because a lot of the work had started, so for us to identify on that stop sign sheet where this really rests, it can be in between spaces right now. So moving forward, it'll be very clean cut, but right now, all the work that we had Honer do for this discussion and recommendation to you was to review those costs, because the cost estimates were from 2018, and so they have updated the cost estimates for 2023. So this slide now shows you that cost estimate, and you can see that the total project estimate as of September 11th would be $16,655,650. It would include a significant portion to address the HVAC upgrade within the building. It includes addition and renovations and all the pieces to it. It does include a percentage for project contingency and inflation. Very important to always include an appropriate level in that. And I do have a disclaimer at the bottom that this is based on the square footage and the cost per square footage estimates as of September 11th. If we are provided updated information, you will be apprised of that information. Now we transition to Fairmont Elementary, and again, we're providing you the demographer information, and this was the funny for us, was that the current enrollment is 1,015, and that is what the demographer projected, 1,015 for the high, based on the August 2022 study. The capacity of the building is indicated at 865 for serving the student population there. There are trailers on that property, and those are being used to provide specialized support of instruction staff. So students are not currently being educated out in those spaces, but again, it's a makeshift approach. It's a workaround to providing spaces for all the people that are needed to support our kids. The music room is an interesting place. I did tour these buildings with Mr. Stetzer, and kids are happy and being loved on and educated, but they definitely have some challenges in terms of how they receive instruction. And in this situation, the music area takes place in a partially enclosed place. So I personally would have a hard time teaching a class nearby, but that means that the sound then is traveling in places it'd be best to not go. There's another small makeshift instructional space, that small little room there where someone's working in basically a closet. So again, highlighting space limitations and challenges. The music classroom is in the old library, and then we also have noted with regard to other challenges that playground accessibility in the site parking lot would be part of this review process. This shows you a version of the draft design. You can see there. And for the cost estimate for Fairmont Elementary, again, it's laid out the same as Henderson. The grand total estimate at this time, as of September 11th, 2023, is $5,898,992 for the work that needs to occur at Fairmont. So taking you back to that unallocated remaining balance of $84,222,972, we're showing you that if Henderson and Fairmont were approved to move forward, those are a combined total of $22,554,642, leaving $61,668,330 for future recommendations. And when we say future recommendations, I want you to know, and Dr. Rompus and I have talked about this quite a bit, due to getting the funds expended in a timely fashion, the requirement of those bond funds, that recommendation would be forthcoming as quickly as possible for your consideration. So in consultation with Honer and Associates, we have noted here, ideally we would be seeking your approval for this recommendation, either during the month of September still or in October. There would be a 6-month window for design and the construction document development that Honer would then progress through. The bid window would be between March and April. It takes 4 weeks for an appropriate sealed bid process. And then May, we would break ground as soon as school is out, or whatever that work needs to look like. We would move forward. So we've noted here, considering that special board meeting for approval to expedite the work, if we're able to provide you all the information you need. And then we would definitely provide you those continuing updates and seek approval. And we may in the future also be seeking special board meetings to continue the work very quickly based on the construction schedule demands. This slide shows you some of the other projects for consideration when you think about how that remaining fund might be distributed. These are some of the projects from the original presentation with regard to needs in the system. I do have at the top the transportation, continuing that work there. There is a need from a safety perspective that we address the fuel island and also provide an expanded bus barn. So that would be a priority from my perspective. The other items, we would be open to whatever questions or inquiry you might have relative to those projects. I should note too at the bottom, I can't go back again, but it's okay. None of the deferred maintenance items. So there was quite a list of deferred maintenance that had been identified for the original Proposition S fund, and none of that is noted. So we've had significant conversations about addressing the needs so that we can not be reacting and we can be proactive and then just maintain what we have, just protecting the building assets and also taking care of grounds as well. That concludes the presentation. Do you have any questions?
Questions for it? Doesn't look like it. Thank you, Ms. Embry.
Okay, great.
So President Bertrand, following up on that, we would like, if the board is willing to entertain those two projects specifically, something that Ms. Embry said that I want to reiterate is that those two buildings specifically are not about capacity. You know, there's always a discussion based on where we're at. Could we redo some boundaries that would alleviate the enrollment in those buildings, and would that change that? These recommendations are about the programmatic needs of those buildings and the spaces they're currently in. When you look at those designs, it's not adding significant general classroom spaces. It's really moving some suites of classrooms around for office spaces that would allow us to better utilize the existing space and making those changes. Both of those projects would likely be summer projects. We do not have an empty elementary or building in the district where we could move Henderson to while we would do this work. And so it would be, the timeline will be tight. And that's why we're hoping that the board will entertain a special meeting in the next few weeks that we could have Honer come share the more detailed drawings, talk through the estimates, to give them the go-ahead to move on those schematic designs and finalizing them if we hope to begin that work this summer.
Thank you, Ken. With that, I assume you'd want the board to be thinking about questions and what input they need from the district in order to make that decision.
Yes, please.
Now we're going to have this extra special meeting that I'm sure we'll talk more about, but I guess my initial thoughts when seeing that schedule is if we're going to bid it in March-April timeframe, it seems a little bit unrealistic that a contractor would mob and have all the materials by May. I don't know if lead times have improved all that much. lately, but I think even just in a regular, 5 years ago, it would be hard to get that many materials. 30 days, but something to ask the architect, I think, just how realistic is that? So that's all I got on that.
Up next, just for community information, there is a number of policies for first read. If anybody wants to look at those, take their time and look at those and offer feedback, feel free. Otherwise, I'll turn over to Dr. Rumpus for superintendent comments.
Thank you, President Bertrand. The first thing I would like to address to the board and to our community is about the email that parents received from the district earlier this week following the Sunshine requests for student directory information. We understand that before this communication, many parents were unaware of the district policies regarding student information and the access that individuals and outside organizations have to directory information via Missouri Sunshine Law and the nuance between that and FERPA, which protects student information. We are working with you as a board to determine how we can limit these sorts of disclosures in the future, looking both at possibly policy or regulation changes, and also looking at ways that we could offer more flexibility for our parents who want to protect their child's information from third parties while still allowing them to be included in school yearbooks or other publications or sharing of information that the parents would deem appropriate. We do want the community to know that we take student privacy seriously. We are continuing to work on this and have been since this was brought to our attention. We've already been updating some of the guidance for our families. We will continue to do so over the next several weeks, and as we make any changes, either in our internal processes or working with you, that we will communicate that to our parents and allow them time following that to make a decision to opt out as they see appropriate for their family based on those changes. I apologize. We want to apologize. We know it's caused some frustration and concern in the community, and we're committed to improving the process and the communication moving forward to avoid this happening again. The other thing that I would like to share is that following that communication earlier this week, we shared that one Sunshine request had been fulfilled. We had also received a second request for directory information, but in that request it was actually asked to be run on October 1st. Since this happened, we have reached out to that requester and asked if they would be willing to delay the date of that Sunshine request in order to allow us to do the work with you as a board, to make any changes to policy or regulation that we see necessary, and to adjust our internal processes, and then to communicate again that to our families and allow them the opportunity to opt out as desired. I'm happy to share with you that the person did agree, and that will give us additional time to work with you to make those changes. And again, any changes we make, then parents will have the opportunity to receive that information, opt out as appropriate, and then we would move forward with any future requests. I mentioned last month our new Citizens in Our Schools program that we started, and since that time we had an amazing opening reception with the group where they got to introduce themselves, learn a little bit more about the program and each other and the experience they will have this year. They will come together again on October 4th for a driving tour of our 23 sites and really get to see what 150 square miles looks like traveling in a school bus. So we're excited about that and getting to share some fun facts with them about the district at each stop. Our district communications team and our Francis Howell High School students are teaming up to host the prom for senior citizens on Saturday, September 30th that you've heard about several times tonight. It'll be from 3 to 5 at Howell High. They have volunteered to host it before their homecoming dance that evening. This idea came directly from our Senior Pals group that we host events with each year. So students will host residents aged 55 and older as they celebrate and dance to music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We do have space for more participants, but tomorrow is the deadline. So if you are interested or want to bring your friends who are 55 and older, please go to the website and sign up tomorrow. Constitution Day was last Sunday, September 17th, and our schools across the district have been participating in a variety of different activities at all grade levels, really where they celebrate and get to learn more about the Constitution. And it fell on a weekend, so that was happening last week and this week. Some examples are our third grade students read and wrote about the purpose of the Constitution and learned about the founding fathers and the motivation for independence and freedom. Our fourth grade students read about the Missouri Constitution specifically and how that's aligned to the U.S. Constitution. At the secondary level, there were a variety of activities, ranging from puzzles, quizzes, presentations, scavenger hunts, all related to the Constitution. So really a great week of hands-on learning and understanding the U.S. Constitution. I also want to thank there are several organizations that donate small handheld size versions of the Constitution to us to distribute to our students, and we've appreciated that. I had the pleasure a few weeks ago of attending our annual marching band preview. This is an amazing opportunity where our 3 high schools marching bands come together and each preview the show that they're going to perform throughout the year, kind of kicking off Friday Night Lights. It's done to a packed house. Really want to give a shout out to the amazing band directors and many parent volunteers who really are involved every single week to make those performances possible. I also want to recognize that I, along with most of you, got to attend the 8th Annual First Responders and Military Appreciation Night game at September 8th at Howell High. Again, an incredible night with so many community members, first responders, a helicopter landing on the field with a parent and SRO delivering the game ball. Just an amazing experience. And that night, they raised nearly $3,000 for Backstoppers, bringing the total of the event over 8 years to just over $20,000 that has been donated and given to Backstoppers, to support the spouses and dependent children of first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty. Continuing with that, I realized continually how amazing our partnership is with our local law enforcement and first responders. Their expertise and professionalism came to the forefront a couple weeks ago when we had to work through an unfortunate situation of a bomb threat at one of our schools. Each time an event like that happens, I want you and our community to know that we come together and debrief that. Had an opportunity to meet several times now and work with our law enforcement to talk about what went well, what we need to do differently to keep our students and our staff safe moving forward. They know exactly how to respond to each situation, but yet they also, as first responders, want to look at what they can do better and how they can better support us. And so I thank both St. Charles County and the other agencies that were involved in that. And I mentioned to the board earlier this evening that Dr. Salvo has arranged a meeting that we'll be doing with the other 4 St. Charles County school districts and their safety group, working with the St. Charles County Bomb Squad to talk about how we can work together as a county to best support our schools. And last, I'll share that yesterday I had the opportunity to present to the St. Charles County Regional Chamber at their luncheon and shared both some of the challenges we face as a district, but also got to celebrate a lot of the great things. It was a wonderful reminder for me to really get to celebrate the amazing things happening at 5 public school districts in this county. And I think it's rare that you can be in a county where you can't go wrong with the school district that you choose. I happen to think Francis Howell is pretty amazing, but I will also celebrate the other 4 districts that were there. But it was just a demonstration of how we work together and really reinforce one another. And again, every single high school in St. Charles County is in the top 50 in the state on those rankings that recently came out, and that's pretty incredible. So thank you to our students and our staff and our community that make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rumpus. Board, any board comments?
I know a lot of you, and I mean a lot of you out there have contacted me, have called me, spoke with me. I've spoken to students and teachers and various other people around the district with regards to the resolution on racism and discrimination. And I want to let you know where my mind kind of is as I took on this endeavor, and that's what I really do consider it. I consider it an endeavor, and as I heard some of you speaking tonight, Stephen Blair, Chris Brooks, Marissa, Grayson. Grayson's right. We're at a crossroads here. We can really, choose to do something or choose to do nothing, or what do we do? And I thought in the beginning, shortly thereafter the meeting, I was in my car and I thought, how am I going to do this? What did I get myself into, right? And it was one of those things where it's like, well, this is a great opportunity for us as a district. We can show the country, the region, show each other that we can get along and we can come together and make this a great place to be, and a district that really sets an example for the rest of the world if we want it to. So I started out looking at it as I asked my daughter, she's 7, and I thought, what does she think? How does she feel about this? So I flat out asked her, I said, do you need something on the wall? Do you need a piece of paper on the wall to make you feel safe? And she said, no, Daddy, I don't need that. And I said, okay, all right, I kind of feel the same way. I don't need it. But we both kind of agreed that there are some kids and some families that do. And what that looks like, I don't know. I've got, it was very, very profound of a statement from a 7-year-old, but she really made me realize that this is just how important this really is to everybody, and the opportunity that we all have to really come together. I've got, several drafts in my head, several drafts on paper, several, as Grayson said, several forks in the road that we can go down. I've talked to the board. I've talked to students and teachers and more people than I've talked to in a long, long time. And there's a lot of people that are in this crowd right now that have reached out to me. I hold all of your opinions in high regard. I'm taking them all into consideration. I've spoken to our chief communications director about a meeting that we're going to talk about tomorrow about possibly putting something together for next week. One of the things that I didn't want to do, or that I should say I wanted to do, is keep the politics out of this. Politics has no place in this. It has no place here. It has no place up here. And I kind of made a general, internal policy that special interest groups and political action committees will have no place in this. This is of the people and by the people and for the people, and that's the way that it will stay. I've had an unbelievable number of people reach out to me, and the people that are from those groups that have reached out, I've told them exactly that. So whatever we come up with, however we do this, whatever we decide, is going to be from us as a district, as the people, as the students of this district. So again, I just wanted you all to know where this is coming from and where this is headed. And everybody understands, I hope by now, that you can reach out to me, you can email me at any time, and I'm happy to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But please understand that this is a work in progress. It's not something that we can rush. But to Grayson's point, we do have a fork in the road, and we have a great opportunity, in my view, that we need to take advantage of and come together as a community and really ensure that we do what's best for this district.
All right. We've got just two topics to comment on tonight. The first is regarding transparency with curriculum. I'd like to just request that all of the board-approved curriculum be placed on the district's website, specifically under the curriculum and assessment webpage. So just to provide a little context to those who are wondering what in the world I'm talking about, I'll just note that the district's website was overhauled last December, and only curricula for what I would consider to be the core subjects is available on our curriculum and assessment webpage. So that's math, English, language arts, science, and social studies. So if a mother or father were to go to a website and look for the curriculum for 9th grade health, 1st grade art, music, or dozens of high school electives, our gifted program, and many other curricula, they won't find them there. So the old website was not complete either. But as I recall, it listed many more curricula than our current website does. Several months ago, shortly after our new website was launched, I brought this concern up during a one-on-one conversation I was having with someone in the admin. And as I recall, there was apprehension about posting many of the curricula because they're not all consistent in format. Some have links or references to outdated websites or resources that are no longer used. So I understand that apprehension. I think it's a valid concern. But I'm not sure it's a reason to hold back making all those documents, which are the current board-approved curriculum, easily available. So to be sure, most, if not all, of the board-approved curricula is available via Board Docs. But as anyone who's used Board Docs knows, the site is not the friendliest to navigate, and the search function leaves a lot to be desired. So more important, though, is the fact that the average parent or guardian would not know to look in Board Docs for the curricula they seek. They'll likely go to the website, they'll click on the academics, then on curriculum and assessment, where they will search in vain for the curriculum approved for many of our classes. So additionally, I'd just like to request that the curricula linked for the parents be the actual PDF documents approved by the Board of Education. On the old website, I noted that in the past that the versions available to parents were not the same versions approved by the board. The parent-facing versions, in some cases, had fewer pages than the board-approved versions in the examples I found. So, just to summarize, I think it's important to be very transparent about what the board-approved curricula is and what's being used. So we've all experienced the frustration of looking for something on a website and just not finding it. And I don't wish that upon any of the parents or guardians here. And lastly, I want to be crystal clear that I don't have any reason to believe that the lack of certain criteria on the curriculum and assessment webpage is any way linked to any ill intent or attempt to hide certain curricula or anything like that. I truly don't. Rather, I just believe it's just a matter of looking for a solution to the concerns that were expressed to me earlier this year. But until a solution is found, I think it's worthwhile to just be transparent and put everything out there and handle questions about anything that might be outdated on a case-by-case basis. My second comment tonight I have is regarding the student directory information data. And this is very hard to talk about, but I'm a father, just like many of you out there. But, you know, I want people to imagine you're waiting for your second grade daughter at the school bus stop. And when the bus arrives, 3 students get off the bus. Now imagine that as the bus leaves, you see 3 adults get out of the car behind the bus and follow each student home. You notice the lady following you and your daughter as a clipboard is jotting down notes as you walk to your door. You confront this person, and she tells you that her and her pals are just collecting the addresses of your daughter and the other 2 kids that got off the bus, and that there's no need to worry, what she's doing is perfectly legal. Now try to imagine, in this hypothetical scenario, that you don't do what would come naturally to you, but instead you keep your cool and you continue your conversation with this person, and you ask, why is she collecting this information about your daughter? She responds, she's merely collecting public information about your daughter so she can make sure you are registered to vote and send you political propaganda. And then without batting an eye, she proceeds to ask you for your daughter's first and last name, your phone number and email address, what school your daughter attends, and what grade she's in. This sounds downright weird and sick, because it is. In theory, this is perfectly legal to sit in a car and watch kids get off the bus and copy down their addresses and roll down the window to hear the parents call their kids by name so you can write that down. But if you're caught doing this, you're very likely going to get a visit from the police, and rightly so. Decent people don't do this, though, because they know the scrutiny they will face in the court of public opinion and when their neighbors start telling each other who was following kids off the bus. Indecent people do this sort of thing. People with little to no respect for the privacy of kids do this. And such people should not be surprised when those of us charged with protecting kids call them out.
That's right.
As many of us in this room know, instead of taking the time to follow 16,000 of your kids home from school and collect all that information and risk being seen, 2 individuals just recently requested your students' data via an open records request or sunshine request, effectively exploiting the information that schools use and have used for years, designated as directory information. So we can do things like publish yearbooks, publish a list on our website of who's on the football team, and other routine school matters like that. But by sending a few emails, one person was able to make a sunshine request for all publicly available directory information for the students in our district. She even used the word all in her request. And a few days later, she was given a listing with not quite all the available data, but student first and last name, address, school building, and grade of nearly all the students who are enrolled in this district, along with the phone number and email address of each student's parent or guardian. It's unbelievable. And then it may be perfectly legal, but not everything that's legal is right. Maybe legal is stand bus stops and record the addresses of kids as they walk home, but it is not right. According to Facebook posts made by each organization over the past few days, since I made this news public on Saturday night, the Political Action Committee of St. Charles County Families for Public Schools stated that they made one of the recent requests, which is the request still pending to be fulfilled, and the other recent request, which has been fulfilled, was made by the FHEA which of course is the local teachers union for those who aren't savvy with the lingo around here. I first learned of these sunshine requests for the personal directory information data of students Saturday night, and just before I made it public. I was reviewing our agenda for this meeting tonight, which is how many school board members spend Saturday nights once a month. And when I came across this agenda item we considered earlier tonight relating to an unrelated sunshine request, I saw it. As a board member, I have access to the annual spreadsheets we maintain to log sunshine requests, along with very brief notes about the status of each request. So I checked the list for any notes that might be relevant to my review of tonight's agenda item. It was then that I noticed the 2 recent requests for student directory information data. Now, if these 2 organizations are using this data for electioneering and voter registration as they've claimed, then shame on them for using student data for political gain. I can think of nothing shallower, and that's saying a lot in the world of politics, although I'm not an expert in that arena. But even if it's true, the data is for electioneering and voter registration, then the data requested and obtained is far more than would be needed to send a mailer to someone's home. All of us adults know that when we become adults, we eventually make our ways onto all kinds of phone, mailing, and now text message lists for politics, car warranty extensions, and so on. But kids don't vote, their parents do. I'm not sure why these groups don't just get the list of registered adult voters like every other political organization does. The data on kids is not good. So where do we go from here? Now we as a board and a school district administration have to spend time crafting policy revisions to prohibit actions that common sense people know are wrong. It would be great if our legislators also took on this issue and carved out restrictions on sharing student data in such a sleazy way, but I cannot wait for that. As I've stated elsewhere, and I'm committed to working with the administration and our legal counsel to develop something I feel most parents here would consider reasonable with respect to their students' privacy from groups that seek to obtain details about them. In fact, this work's already begun. Those of us sitting up here were elected by our community, at least in part, to protect students. And it would be great if the people and organizations in our community would help us do that by refraining from collecting this personal data and details of my children and everyone else's children, whether that's with a van and a clipboard or an email from their computer. That's all I have to say about that right now. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Director Cook. I have 2 items that I would like to discuss with everyone as well. Just a heads up for those parents that want to filter what their children are exposed to. If you are concerned about inappropriate books that your children can have access to, I have had some reports that scholastic book fairs have books that are inappropriate with sexual content. When my granddaughters were in grade school, I would go and let them pick out any 2 books that they wanted in the interest of having them enjoy the act of reading. I never opened it or looked at any of the content. We now live in a very different world. My comment to parents today is to be vigilant, make sure you open up the book and make sure it's appropriate for your child, because as we know, the title is not always revealing of the content. It's a different world we live in, but never forget that you have the absolute right to restrict what your child is exposed to. My opinion is that as a school board member, I must respect that wish and make it impossible for your child to be exposed to things you don't agree with. After all, your taxes pay the bills. Many thanks to all the parents that take the time and the energy to make us aware of what's happening. Now let me move on to the discussion about bathrooms. If you are a parent or guardian of a young lady and think letting a young man in the restroom the same time as your daughter is extremely inappropriate, I know the vast majority of people in the district would agree with this. I also think that if you, just the opposite, if you have a son, then you would be appalled to know, and I have had direct reports of this, that a girl walked into the boys' bathroom and used a device so that she could use the urinal. That happened in this district. I know that the majority of the people would agree with what I agree with, And actually, I predict that approximately 99.8% would agree. If you're appalled when your son comes home and says there's a girl in the boys' restroom, I'm sure as a parent you are just as appalled. I, for one, am very disappointed that we are having to step in and have this conversation in the first place.
Right.
I've heard the comment that Title IX mandates that we allow boys in the girls' bathrooms and vice versa. This is absolutely, totally, and irretrievably incorrect. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education added language to Title IX after it was written, and it's their writing is merely an interpretation. It is not a law. A mere interpretation, again, not law. Gender identification is identified as a protected class, but in no way does it mean boys or girls can switch bathrooms. Right now, there's a school in Pennsylvania where hundreds of students walked out of the school in protest for this very activity going on for 2 days this week. And I'm waiting to hear if they're going to walk out again tomorrow, or at least until it's settled. Is this what we want for Francis Howell? We need to put an end to any confusion surrounding this issue. Kids should have a voice in this decision, and administrators and board members should be listening. I get a little emotional. Should be listening to the 99.8% of those that disagree. Yes, those privileges, I believe, are inappropriate, and I'm sure the majority of the students of this district would agree with me. I thank my fellow board members for their consideration in writing and passing an appropriate bathroom bill. Thank you.
We've had a lot of commentary up here, so I'm going to shorten mine up to a few key points. First off, I'd just like to thank Director Ponder for all the time and energy he's put in his efforts on reviewing the resolution and collecting information, talking to stakeholders, and just having those conversations. I know it's a lot. It's away from your family, and I really appreciate that. Second, just thanks to the administration, to the district for all the work I know you guys really jumped to around this directory information stuff. I know it's been a busy week probably because of that, and I just really appreciate it. I know you guys have worked hard. I just want to personally say, to the community, I don't believe there was any malice or ill intent to any of it. It was just, I think district desires to fulfill the legal obligations around the sunshine requests, just so everybody's aware, and they were great as we work through kind of what the next steps are. And finally, I'd like to thank Cecile for being here. Any last commentary that you have?
Just thank you.
Nothing else to say.
Sure. Board would like a motion to adjourn open session.
So moved.
Pushkar, Ponder. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it.